When you think of Arizona wealth, you picture tech transplants and real estate developers in Scottsdale. But that is a carefully engineered illusion. The real power quietly crossing the Sonoran Desert is far more entrenched. We are talking about elite Mexican dynasties and cross-border billionaires utilizing the Grand Canyon State as their personal, highly fortified offshore bank account. Number 7. The Aramburuzabala family, the private equity queen. The immense, terrifyingly liquid wealth of María Asunción. Aramburuzabala is legendary, deeply rooted in the absolute global domination of the commercial alcohol trade. Her grandfather, a Spanish immigrant, co-founded Grupo Modelo, the iconic brewing behemoth responsible for introducing Corona and Modelo Especial to the world. As the primary heiress to this staggering empire, María Asunción did not simply allow corporate executives to dictate her future. She aggressively took the reins of the corporate board and engineered the ultimate liquidity event. In 2013, she orchestrated the sale of Grupo Modelo to the massive multinational conglomerate AB InBev for an earth-shattering $20 billion. This single transaction minted her as the wealthiest woman in Mexico and provided her with a terrifying war chest of purely liquid capital. Inheriting a massive corporate empire is one thing. Successfully converting it into liquid cash and protecting it from inflation and political instability requires absolute genius. Following the monumental sale, María Asunción established Tresalia Capital, meaning three allies, representing herself, her mother, and her sister. She systematically and ruthlessly diversified her billions entirely away from the Mexican peso and the single-sector risk of alcohol production. She transformed her family office into a highly sophisticated, apex private equity firm, aggressively targeting ultra-secure, dollar-denominated assets across the United States. The ultimate manifestation of Tresalia Capital's power was a massive, highly calculated invasion into the commercial real estate and technology infrastructure of the American Sun Belt, with a heavy operational focus on booming states like Arizona. She recognized that the physical brewing of beer was a 20th century fortune. The 21st century fortune belonged exclusively to the landlords of the American economy. She poured hundreds of millions of dollars into acquiring massive, Class A multifamily real estate developments across the Southwest, housing the massive influx of tech workers migrating to Phoenix and Scottsdale. She seamlessly transitioned from providing the beverages of the working class to owning the physical architecture required by the coastal elite. The American public overwhelmingly views the success of Corona beer as a triumph of domestic marketing. What they fundamentally misunderstand is the true, hidden victor of that historic transaction. The Aramburuzabala family utilized the global thirst for imported beer to extract billions of dollars in cash, completely liquidating their operational risk at the absolute peak of its valuation. They took that massive pile of money, quietly crossed the border, and leveraged it to become one of the most powerful, invisible landlords in the state of Arizona. They no longer sell a product you drink. They quietly own the very infrastructure where you live and work. In the modern hierarchy of global status, selling consumer products is for the working class. Owning the concrete where the working class sleeps is the ultimate expression of absolute, unchallengeable power. Number 6. The Hank Rhon family, the border toll booth. Carlos Hank Rhon and his fiercely powerful family represent the absolute elite of Mexican political and industrial aristocracy. The family fortune was built through a masterful, multi-generational fusion of government influence and heavy infrastructure. Carlos founded Grupo Financiero Interacciones, a highly specialized financial institution that aggressively funded government infrastructure projects. He also controls Grupo Hermes, a colossal conglomerate dominating construction, energy, and transportation. They did not build consumer apps. They built the physical highways, the power grids, and the water treatment plants that modernized Mexico. The Hank Rhon family protected their sprawling empire by deeply embedding themselves into the political infrastructure of the nation. They became indispensable. By financing the very projects that politicians needed to win elections, they ensured their corporate interests were heavily shielded from regulatory scrutiny. When Interacciones was eventually merged with Banorte in a multi-billion-dollar transaction, the family instantly transitioned their highly political banking risk into a massive, highly liquid equity stake in one of the largest financial institutions in Latin America. The true genius of the Hank Rhon dynasty lies in their mastery of cross-border logistics. They recognized that the Arizona-Sonora border is one of the most lucrative, high-volume commercial corridors on Earth. By financing and developing the massive logistical hubs, maquiladoras, and transportation networks in northern Mexico, they effectively established a commercial toll booth. The billions of dollars of manufactured goods, automotive parts, and agricultural products that flood into the massive distribution warehouses of Tucson and Phoenix rely fundamentally on the physical infrastructure funded by the Hank Rhon empire. When American politicians debate border security, they treat the southern border as a defensive wall. The Hank Rhon family views the border as a highly profitable financial filter. They understand that the entire retail economy of the American Southwest is completely dependent on the seamless flow of Mexican manufacturing. The border isn't a barrier, it's a massive, highly optimized commercial artery, and this family finances the concrete and the trucks that keep the GDP of Arizona moving. True power isn't fighting over political borders. True power is owning the logistics networks that ensure you get paid regardless of which flag is flying over the checkpoint. Number 5. The Moreno family. The Skyline Sovereign. Arturo Arte. Moreno is a Mexican-American titan born in Tucson, Arizona. He didn't inherit an industrial conglomerate or a massive trust fund. He built his initial fortune through the gritty, highly aggressive world of outdoor advertising. Moreno took the helm of Outdoor Systems, a billboard advertising company, and relentlessly scaled it across the American landscape. He recognized that as the American suburbs sprawled and commute times exploded, the physical space above the highway became the most valuable marketing real estate on the planet. Moreno protected his empire by executing a perfectly timed, legendary exit strategy. In 1999, at the absolute euphoric peak of the media consolidation boom, he sold Outdoor Systems to Infinity Broadcasting for a staggering $8.3 billion. He took a business model entirely dependent on cyclical advertising budgets and instantly converted it into an untouchable mountain of pure, liquid capital. He transferred his risk to Wall Street and walked away a billionaire. While he is globally famous for taking his billions and purchasing the Los Angeles Angels baseball team for $184 million, making him the first Mexican-American to own a major U.S. sports franchise, his true quiet anchor remains in Arizona. Moreno took his liquid fortune and aggressively purchased massive swaths of prime commercial real estate across the Phoenix metropolitan area. He dominates the zoning and physical development of the valley, ensuring that his wealth compounds securely in the desert dirt regardless of how his baseball team performs on the field. The public overwhelmingly views Arte Moreno simply as a Los Angeles sports owner. They see him sitting in the owner's suite in California and assume his power is tied to the entertainment industry. In reality, he is an Arizona real estate overlord. He used the profits from highway billboards to literally buy the skyline of Phoenix. He treats the sports franchise as a highly leveraged media holding company, but his true generational wealth is permanently anchored in the commercial real estate of the Grand Canyon State. Owning a sports team is the ultimate billionaire vanity project, but owning the commercial real estate that surrounds the stadium is how you ensure the city answers to you. Number 4. The Zambrano family. The Concrete Cartel. The late Lorenzo Zambrano took a modest regional cement operation in Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and transformed it into a terrifyingly efficient, global industrial leviathan. Under his leadership, Cemex expanded from a local supplier into one of the largest building materials companies on the planet. Through a relentless, multi-decade campaign of hostile takeovers and aggressive international acquisitions, the Zambrano family built an empire that generates tens of billions in annual revenue, providing the physical foundation for modern civilization. Concrete is a highly localized, incredibly heavy commodity. You cannot easily ship it across oceans without destroying your profit margins. The Zambrano family protected their empire through absolute, unyielding vertical integration within the United States. They didn't just export cement, they crossed the border and aggressively purchased American quarries, massive mixing facilities, and fleets of delivery trucks. By owning the entire supply chain from the limestone mine to the construction site, they completely insulated themselves from foreign competition and shipping costs. The ultimate power move of the Zambrano dynasty is their absolute dominance over the explosive population growth of the American Sunbelt. Arizona is one of the fastest-growing states in the country, with Phoenix and Maricopa County leading the nation in new residential and commercial construction. Every single sprawling master-planned community, towering office complex, and newly paved mega highway in the desert relies fundamentally on Cemex concrete. They monopolize the literal physical foundation of the state's economic boom. Home buyers migrating from California to Scottsdale proudly believe they are purchasing the American dream. They marvel at their brand-new stucco-clad suburban mansions. This is a massive, fundamental misunderstanding of the construction supply chain. The structural skeleton of that home, the concrete slab it rests upon, and the roads connecting it to the city were poured and profited upon by a Mexican billionaire family. They do not just sell a product, they extract a mandatory tax on the physical growth of the Sunbelt. In the brutal mathematics of real estate, the developer takes the risk, but the entity that supplies the concrete takes the guaranteed profit before the foundation is even poured. Number 3. The Slim Dynasty. The Telecom Sovereigns. Carlos Slim Helú is a name that commands absolute, unquestioned reverence in the halls of global finance. For years, he held the title of the absolute richest man on planet Earth. He built his incomprehensible fortune, currently hovering near $100 billion, through a brutal, monopolistic domination of the Latin American telecommunications sector. During the privatization of the Mexican economy in the 1990s, Slim acquired Telmex, effectively cornering the entire national phone grid. He expanded this into América Móvil, establishing a corporate leviathan that controls the cellular networks for hundreds of millions of people. While his telecommunications empire generates billions in daily cash flow, Carlos Slim protected his dynasty by establishing his own centralized financial fortress, Grupo Financiero in Bursa. By owning his own massive commercial bank, Slim completely insulated his family from the whims of third-party lenders. He essentially became a sovereign financial entity, capable of underwriting massive international megaprojects entirely on his own terms, utilizing his bank to deploy his telecom profits into hard, physical assets globally, including massive real estate holdings in the US. Slim didn't just passively invest in Arizona. He aggressively lobbied its highest political offices. During high-profile, exclusive summits in Phoenix, Slim directly engaged with Arizona governors to actively expand cross-border trade. He pushed for the commercial relationship to evolve beyond low-level maquiladoras into high-level tech, finance, and real estate integration. By utilizing his immense wealth to dictate bilateral trade agreements, he effectively positioned Arizona as a highly lucrative satellite for his broader North American telecom and infrastructure empire. Americans overwhelmingly view Carlos Slim strictly as a Mexican telecom operator. They assume his power stops at the border. This is a profound illusion. Through subsidiary brands like TracFone, which he built into a massive US prepaid provider before selling, and his sprawling commercial real estate investments, his tentacles reach deep into the American economy. His telecommunications infrastructure and trade lobbying directly dictate the economic policy and commercial viability of the entire Tucson-Phoenix corridor. When a foreign billionaire can summon American governors to closed-door meetings in Phoenix to dictate trade policy, you realize that sovereign governments ultimately bow to sovereign capital. Number 2. The Garcia family. The auto finance cartel. Ernest Garcia II and his son, Ernest Garcia III, are Mexican-American billionaires who operate the most ruthless, highly optimized automotive empire in the country. The elder Garcia initially built his fortune through DriveTime, a sprawling network of traditional used car lots targeting subprime borrowers. However, the family realized that the physical dealership model was outdated. Ernest Garcia III took the foundational capital and infrastructure of DriveTime and launched Carvana, completely digitizing the used car purchasing process and delivering vehicles directly to the consumer's driveway. The used car business is notoriously fragmented, low-margin, and heavily distrusted by the public. The Garcias protected their massive wealth by building a highly centralized digital monopoly. They bypassed the traditional dealership networks entirely. More importantly, they protected their margins by controlling the financing. They do not rely on third-party banks to approve their customers. They originate the loans themselves, package that high-yield debt, and sell it to Wall Street institutional investors, completely insulating themselves from consumer default risk. Carvana's massive IPO and subsequent pandemic-era stock surges elevated the Garcias to the absolute pinnacle of Arizona wealth, boasting a combined net worth that fluctuated into the tens of billions of dollars. They established their massive corporate headquarters in Tempe, Arizona, completely dominating the local tech sector. Furthermore, they constructed towering, multi-story glass car vending machines across the state and the country, permanently altering consumer psychology and transforming the simple act of buying a used Honda into a theatrical branded experience. The public overwhelmingly believes Carvana is an innovative tech company that disrupted how cars are sold. This is a massive, carefully engineered deception. Carvana is not an automotive retailer. It is a highly sophisticated, subprime loan originator disguised as a tech app. The actual metal of the car is entirely irrelevant. The true product is the high-yield, deeply profitable financial debt attached to the vehicle. They don't sell cars. They sell inescapable, multi-year financial contracts to the American middle class. The greatest trick the elite ever pulled was convincing the working class that they were buying a car, when in reality, they were just buying high-yield, inescapable debt. Number 1. The Larrea family, the Copper Kings. Germán Larrea Mota Velasco is the absolute phantom of Mexican capitalism. He is a man so intensely secretive that for decades, no verified photographs of his face existed in the public domain. Commanding a staggering personal net worth exceeding $60 billion, he is the second richest man in Mexico. The foundation of this terrifying dynastic wealth was excavated directly from the dirt. Through his conglomerate, Grupo Modelo, he controls one of the largest copper producers on the entire planet. They completely monopolize the extraction of the highly conductive metal that is absolutely critical to modern electrical grids, the explosion of electric vehicles, and global telecommunications infrastructure. Mining is an incredibly dangerous, heavily regulated, and politically volatile industry. A single government decree or environmental disaster can wipe out billions in equity overnight. The Larrea family knew that relying strictly on the extraction of copper within the sovereign borders of Mexico was a fatal vulnerability. They protected their astronomical wealth through a ruthless, highly calculated diversification into heavy logistical infrastructure and massive cross-border acquisitions. They acquired massive railway networks to control the freight, and most importantly, in 1999, they crossed the border to acquire ASARCO, an American smelting and refining titan. When ASARCO fell into bankruptcy during the 2000s, Larrea fought a brutal, multi-billion-dollar legal war in the U.S. courts to regain total control of the entity by 2009, successfully shielding his most valuable American assets. The ultimate flex of the Larrea dynasty was extending their iron monopolistic grip directly into the geographic identity of Arizona. Arizona's official state nickname is the Copper State. The Larrea family literally purchased the defining geological identity of the region. Through ASARCO, Grupo Modelo operates the massive Mission Mine complex in Sahuarita, the sprawling Ray Mine, the Silver Bell Mine, and the highly critical Hayden Smelter. They do not just export products to Arizona, they own the literal physical bedrock of the state. As the global demand for copper absolutely skyrockets due to the transition to renewable energy and AI data centers, the Larrea family sits on the ultimate choke point of the American supply chain. American politicians constantly preach about domestic energy independence and the reshoring of critical supply chains. They proudly point to the massive, sprawling mining operations in the Arizona desert as definitive proof of American industrial might. This is a massive, fundamental misunderstanding of the global commodities market. The literal earth of Arizona, the highly valuable copper buried deep in its soil, is actively extracted, processed, and profited upon by Mexico's second richest billionaire. Texans think they control their oil, and Arizonans think they control their copper. The Larrea family proves that true, untouchable wealth is not found in the political borders on a map. It is found in owning the legal deeds to the dirt beneath them. You can pass all the zoning laws you want on the surface, but the family that owns the mineral rights beneath the earth is the undisputed king of the state. Arizona is not just a desert oasis. It is a privately owned, highly fortified vault for Mexico's most powerful industrial oligarchs and border-crossing billionaires. Which of these empires holds the most absolute control? The auto financiers or the copper kings? Let me know down below. If you want to understand who really runs the world, like and subscribe to Global Status. We track the money,